The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development. With a magazine and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives, at The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co. Hi, I'm Bernardo Moya from The Best You, and today I'm here with Rohan Weerainghe, who is actually an author, international speaker and a businessman, and I'm delighted to have him here as a guest today. Hi,
Thanks
Rohan, how are
Bernardo.
you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me where you're from, where do you live?
Well, I have a mixed heritage. My mum was a classic English woman. She's a Brahmi. My father, Sri Lankan, came over in the late 50s, early 60s. So they met, grew up in a very challenging period. Had myself and my two brothers. I was born in Hitchin in Hertfordshire in the UK, and went on a bit of a journey. My father died when I was very young, so I was 13 years of age. So I witnessed my mum bringing three of us up through quite a difficult period. I went on to study extremely hard, got myself a degree, a PhD, worked very hard, and that's led me along lots of different routes, which I'm sure may come out through the interview. But currently living on the south coast, so just outside Brighton.
Lovely.
I've been travelling for a few years. We sold up our home in the UK and went travelling, spent a bit of time overseas, but back here now in this lovely warm climate.
Oh, how long is this winter? What I was going to ask you is how was school? What was school like for you?
I went to a very conventional school. I didn't have any private education. My mum and my father didn't have a huge amount of money, so I went through pretty much the old standard system of 11. I went into studying O-levels, as it was called then, and I studied very hard. It was an interesting period for me because my father was very ill, so I grew up experiencing challenges at home with my father. He became very paralysed through a series of strokes, and in work, because my mum worked so hard, I think I adopted a model of, okay, success is basically just work very, very long hours. I saw my mum working 2 jobs a day to support the family. So my ethos to my education, my growing up, was very much head down, work as hard as you can. Nobody taught me about working smart. It was just work hard.
What did your parents do?
My mum worked as an assistant in a school during the daytime, and in the evening she worked on a factory floor for ICL computers. And my father was an extremely bright man, and even though he was paralysed through his strokes, he continued working as an engineer, as a mechanical engineer, designer.
And what subjects in particular did you actually like at school?
Mathematics was I had a natural attraction to it. Design, I was very creative in my thinking. I loved English, but I didn't actually study it to a high level. I was a natural writer, but for some reason I didn't pursue that. I tended to be drawn into the engineering world. And of course, as young boys do, athletics. I was very big on sport and athletics.
You mentioned about your dad. Obviously, it must have had an impact when you were 13?
Yeah, 13 years of age.
How did that affect you?
I grew up with him being quite ill. So from before I was 10, my father had a series of strokes. What it did more than anything else, I'm the eldest of the three lads, so I have 2 brothers. It put a lot of responsibility on me, and I think maybe some of the people that read your magazine or watch the interviews who have had that experience may relate to that. I found myself taking on a lot of responsibility in the household, particularly after he died. I'll never forget when we talk about NLP, I got anchored at my father's funeral because my uncles and family were coming up and saying, you're the head of the household now, it's important that you look after the family and support everybody. And I literally took that on at a young age, and I just put my head down and worked. And I think that ethos is still in me now. But it was... It made for me, it gave me a sense of value in time. I'm exactly the same age now as my father was when he passed away. He just turned 47, which is what I am now. He was just at that point. So I grew up constantly wanting to suck everything out of life because I had this subconscious ticking clock based on what I saw my father. Whether or not I believed it subconsciously, I don't know, but I just took everything on 100 miles an hour. I took it on and lived it. And whenever I went and did anything, even at a young age, my mum said I just engaged it fully. And I think that was linked to the fact that my father passed away at such a young age.
I mean, after your dad passed away, you carried on studying, and then you went to uni?
Yeah, I studied very hard. I did okay at my A-levels. I didn't do brilliantly. I got enough to get into university. And I was drawn into the field of engineering. And I think back in those days, and I was born in 66, so back in those days, it was around the early 80s. The only level of career education you got was they'd look at your A-level results. And even if you had a passion for something, And I think it's different now, and this is what I say to my audience, is follow your passion and your purpose first, rather than maybe what academically they're telling you should do. I was told, well, you're good at maths, you're good at engineering, drawing, you seem to be quite creative. I think engineering would be good for you. But I wanted to travel, and the one engineering profession that really inspired me in terms of it getting me out into the world was civil engineering. So I took on an engineering degree on the main basis that it would give me the opportunity to travel the world and to see things around the world, because I was a big fan of living beyond just a small world that we live in. Most people just live in one small world, which is their day-to-day activities, whereas I saw beyond that, and I saw engineering, civil engineering, as a way to get into that world and earn money at the same time.
Did you have any mentors at your young age? Anybody that inspired you? Yeah, I
had a mentor. His name was Julian Cottenden. So he must be now, I guess he must be in his late 50s. But he was inspiring in an educational way relating to adventure. So he taught geography, and he took us out climbing. He was the first person to get me to climb a wall, to go camping, and on the weekends he'd give up his time to take a bunch of us out. And he was inspiring because his way of teaching wasn't authoritative. It was just, he had a very strong presence about him, and he encouraged us to follow our passion. And as a result of that, it got me out doing things I probably wouldn't have done. So it wasn't an academic mentor, it was somebody that was more of a life mentor, which I think certainly started to trigger off that side of me when I was younger. The importance of pursuing what you love to do rather than what you feel you have to do.
So you worked as a civil engineer for quite a few years, yeah?
Yeah, got my degree. Didn't do too well in my first few years, mainly because I was out doing the things I love to do, which is travel, climb, and as young guys do, going out and partying a lot. And it was when I went into my third year, or I came back from a year out in vocation, I had a mentor at that point. It's about mentors. It was somebody who was about 3 years older than me. He himself had got a PhD, and he gave me a kick up the bum. He said, look, you're going to go out into this world at the moment. There aren't a lot of people with an Asian background in your profession, and you've got to stand out. And he was West Indian himself, and he said to me, if you want to stand out, you're going to have to go and academically do well. And I stuck my head down for the last year. I worked really hard, got a 2-1 in my degree, got offered an opportunity to do a PhD. And my mentor at that time was really the number one in the world. And that's when I really got a sense of the power of mentoring. And he launched me through a great PhD into a career where I worked as a consultant in a civil engineering company for about 5 years before finally breaking out on my own at a very young age, because most people don't do that in civil engineering. I was in my early 30s.
Early 30s, yeah.
Yeah, I was told I was too young. Yeah, they said you have to have grey hair or no hair. Well, got no hair now, but at the time I had a good head of hair.
Yeah. And what happened then?
Well, the decision to go self-employed didn't happen at the time. If I just go back a few years, at the end of my PhD, I actually started to... I was reading personal development from the age of 18 years of age, and I picked up a book called Dianetics, which is, I think Ron Hubbard wrote the original book, and I don't know how I came across that, but at 18 years of age, I was reading personal development all the way through my degree and my PhD. I was actually going into libraries and reading, even at that young age, personal development books. But by the time I hit my career with a PhD in my hand, my lunch breaks were spent literally every break either listening to audio tapes, reading. We didn't have magazines like Best You in those days, so you had to go around and scrabble. What you produce is amazing. We didn't have that, so I had to go and find that from bookshops. And I realised, looking at people older than me, none of them were doing any sort of personal development whatsoever. The only development they were doing was career-based around engineering. But there was redundancies in the loom. I saw people being dragged up to the boardroom, being escorted off site, and then having to be brought back onto site after 10 years of working for the company and being removed with all they weren't allowed to go to their desks. And that, I got a wake-up call, and I really got my head down. I got involved with a network marketing business for a while, and although that business didn't take off for me personally, what I took from it was the personal development. I started attending seminars, and I realised very quickly I wasn't going to stay in this career. I wanted to get out. I wanted to be self-employed, as Robert Kiyosaki would say. I wanted to move from the E to the S quadrant. And that was my catapult. And I completely ignored the fact that all of the people that are older than me were saying, you're too young, you need to be at least 15, 20 years in the career, they're not going to take you seriously. I had one thing that other people didn't have. I had a passion for helping other people, and I had a PhD which was in the top probably 5 people in the world at what I knew. And that was niche enough for me to break into self-employment. I knew nothing about starting a business, but I had the passion to do it, and that was the most important thing for me at the time.
It is said that we live in a world our questions create. And it's true. Those that have succeeded in life, those that stand out, those that have made a difference, those that are inventing, those that are exploring, pushing the boundaries of reality are based on those that have asked themselves empowering questions. In my new book, The Question, Find Your True Purpose, I help you find your true purpose, find your legacy. For more information, go to www.thequestion.co. If you're interested in working with me, contributing, speaking at any of our many events, partnering, or licensing The Best You, for more information, go to www.thebestyou.co. And what business? What did you actually get involved in?
I set up as a self-employed consultant, so I basically took my skill set and then I had to go out and market myself. So I went from being employed, top left-hand quadrant in the cash flow quadrant, to the bottom left, which is the S, the self-employed. And I was fortunate. I teamed up with the same gentleman I told you about, who was a mentor when I was a young person in my degree, and then my PhD supervisor, who was the number one consultant in the world, went to certain clients and said, "Look, I've got a couple of people here that you might be interested in." And I was fortunate to get referrals, so I set up a business there, and then we set up a limited company to provide service as well in that area. But it was very niche, and it was very much geared around civil engineering. Parallel to that, I was out in colleges teaching young people how to shift their mindset, how to open their minds to become better people in whatever career they wanted to choose. So I had this parallel non-income generating path I was on, which was speaking in public.
And that was that was based on all the articles, seminars you attended.
Exactly.
You wanted to start sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, and I was asked by universities to go in and speak. They said, "Dr. Weerainghe, would you come in and speak to our graduates or undergraduates on how to become successful in civil engineering?" And I used to say to them, "Well, you teach them all the technical stuff. Let me talk to them about the life skills." And nobody was doing that in those days, not at that level, at graduate level. They always had people that were coming in blackboard, very straight-laced. And I just came in with a real mission to teach them to look beyond the academic side of who they were, look at communication skills, listening skills, body language skills, all the tools that aren't really taught at an academic level, because they're the skills that are great in any life, any part of life.
I was actually going to discuss that with you, but that's the thing. The thing is that you look at all the university, kids coming out of university or even coming out of schools, and it's quite concerning, kind of the limited skills they have when it comes down just to life skills, communication, language, And so what are your thoughts regarding, what could be done or what could be done better?
It's a great question. I think there needs to be part of the curriculum an element of personal development, personal evolution, or personal growth, whatever you want to call it. It's a label that I know a lot of people struggle with. And I think because of the label of personal development, it doesn't necessarily get taken as seriously as it should be. If you said to somebody, learn calculus, they'd sit up. If you said to somebody, learn a language, when you say to somebody, learn personal skills like communication, reading people, understanding your beliefs, your values, understanding how to follow a purpose and to articulate a purpose onto paper and to goal set, the average teacher doesn't know how to do that. And I think what's happened is the academic world has been geared towards people getting into a job. It hasn't been geared towards getting them into developing skills to communicate at a higher level. So I think it needs to be part of the curriculum, and I believe that teachers should be taught it at teacher training schools, and whether they have to bring in people like myself, other speakers, to teach that, or whether they develop a curriculum for it. At the moment, I think most academic people are having to go out. Last year we probably had, through my Turning Point events, half a dozen or more teachers that were coming because they wanted to learn life skills to take back to their kids. And fortunately, they're doing that now, actually. So we're getting more people coming through. But it needs to be introduced at that level.
The great thing is there's so many people like yourself who has expertise that are willing to give up their time anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's how I started. And I encourage, a lot of people ask me, well, what should I do to get into the world of speaking? And I say, go give up your time. I mean, I still do it now. Because if you charge for everything, there are certain groups out there, organisations, that cannot afford to bring in a professional speaker, and I think it's important that we get the message out there and give of our time. That's the whole part of being a human being. It's receiving but giving back as well. I believe myself.
Absolutely. So you were running both things. You were running what you actually were passionate about, speaking at schools and colleges, and on the other hand, you as a civil engineer were going out there trying to get some work. What happened from then onwards?
Yeah, the civil engineering work went pretty well, actually. We were picking up clients along the way, but an interesting dynamic happened for me. I started to find myself I'm sure you've come across this yourself, Bernardo, signals coming up telling me, it was simple things like people saying to me, you should do this on a more professional level, you should go out and actually physically develop a speaking career, and I ignored it. And then I had other signs when I was out doing my engineering work, which gave me a feeling of, although I was good at what I was doing, it didn't make me feel alive. And when I was coming back, I started to practice what I was reading and studying and teaching other people, which is when you start to feel alive in what you're doing. And this is a great thing for your listeners and your readers to consider. When you're feeling the most alive, that's probably when you're most on purpose. And I discovered that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, that actually I was more alive doing that than I was doing my engineering. So I started to move more into that area. And I think the big turning point for me was I went and did a 3-day property education course, which got me out of the engineering world and into another form of wealth generation, because I could earn money as a civil engineer, but it was money for time. And I needed something different. I was starting to look around. That's in the 90s, I started reading books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's book. And then I was looking for something. And I'm sure a lot of your readers have found that. They'll open up Best You magazine and they'll look inside and they'll go, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And that's why magazines like this are so important, because you don't always know what you're looking for, but you'll read through the pages of Best You and there it is. It resonates, you can feel it as an energy within you, and you go, why does that appeal to me? And that's what happened to me. And it was the speaking. I was feeling more buzzed up, inspiring people than I was sitting down with a consultant, another company helping them. So I started to make this transition. What the property platform did for me, because we bought 40 properties in a year using the techniques we'd learned, is I got invited to speak more on that. And that opened up another arena for me. Before I knew it, people were paying me for that as well, which I hadn't planned for originally.
So, from then onwards, you're a successful businessman now with your property portfolio.
Yeah.
And obviously now it gave you the opportunity to doing what you were passionate about.
Yeah, that was a big transition. So 2001, 2002 was, I talk about turning points, this is what the book was based on. It was a turning point, a conscious turning point. I teamed up with my business partner who had a...
Sorry, when did you write Turning Point?
So I wrote the Turning Point in 2011.
Okay.
But the turning point refers back to major turning points in my life. So I explained to people that turning points happen to us, or we can consciously create a turning point. And the 2001, 2002 experience for me was realising that if I could develop a property business, that gave me more control over my time, because ultimately residual income really just buys us time freedom. And I think for a lot of people, they're so tied into their career, their job. And I'm sure you have a lot of readers that are extremely professional in their nature, but they almost feel obligated to stay in that career. It gave me choices, and that's the one thing I didn't feel I'd had up to that, even though you might argue, well, you're a consultant, you're working for yourself. But if I stopped doing that, I lost the opportunity to be time free. So what this shift for me, this turning point, it allowed me to start to speak in different areas. So although I was speaking on property, I was finding I was speaking to an audience of 100, 200, 300 people. But actually, most of them were coming up and their challenges were with their personal development, not with the how to buy a property at a discount. So
they're limiting beliefs.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was beliefs about money. It was beliefs about success. What are my family going to think? My friends are acting differently towards me because of my attitude towards my job, my career. But I was also finding people's values were out of alignment. They were working in a career which was not aligned with their values. So it was conflict of values alignment. And that was another thing that was coming up. So I found that I was introducing 30 to 40% of my education I was teaching on property ended up having to be personal development. Otherwise, people weren't making a shift. So that's when I started to introduce more of that into my speaking at a higher level.
And that's the book you published in 2011. Tell me about the book. Is that what it goes through? It explains the whole process of...
Yeah, the turning point. I got a lot of pressure from the outside world, because I speak around the world on two main areas, where it's wealth development, which is focused primarily on property, although I used to teach on the stock market. And the other side is personal development. And what happened was people were saying, are you going to write a book on property? It'd be great if you can go into writing. And I sat down the same way I encourage anyone to do. And I said to myself, what's the most important message right now that I feel I need to get out there? And what am I most aligned with? And as much as I wanted to write a property book, it was actually working on people's turning points, because this word kept coming up into my head, which was we all go through these turning points. And whether it's, I had an event just recently, a lady walks in on her husband, having sex with his wife, with another woman, and that was a massive turning point for her. She ended up not having a relationship for 5 years with anyone. She gave up on her business. She literally just went into a dark hole. That's something happening to her. I meet people that have had financial difficulties, they've been made redundant, the economy's come along. Anything that happens to somebody results in a turning point. If you meet somebody 5 years later, they say, that was my turning point. I wrote the book because I don't believe people should wait for turning points to occur to them. I think we have the control to create our own turning points. The same way you develop Best You, I think that's giving people a chance to take control of their lives and make their own turning points. I believe there's a system. So I wrote the book showing the system that I went through and that I've helped thousands and thousands of people go through. So I initially talk about the blocks that hold us back. There's a repetitive set of patterns, and then a really practical set of tools. 6 steps, all the way through to dealing with your purpose, which is the very end part of the process, because most people don't wake up on purpose. Most people wake up on an alarm bell to go and pay the bills. So the book is about really taking control and not allowing things to happen to you, but making it a specific process, which some people say, well, can it be that formulaic? And it actually can be. We go through from beliefs right through to changing your environment, your language patterns, a whole series of different things. It's a very powerful process.
To find out about my latest projects, get a free coaching lesson, or download my book, go to www.bernardo-moya.com.
I'll be honest with you, I haven't read it, but I am going to read it. I love the title anyway. I think it's got, and I love the bold truth as well. I think that's brilliant.
Thank you.
I like it. It's kind of my approach. I think you've got to be proactive in life.
Yeah.
You can't. And that was going to take me to the question: society. What do you think? What needs to happen? I mean, because we seem to be in this, and that was one of the reasons I published The Best You, is because there's just doom and gloom and negative news out there, and we just need to go out and make a difference. What do you think the problem with society? What should we do? What should be different?
This is a great question, and I think for the readers of Best You right now, one thing I'd like to share with everybody, because I've been privileged in the last year to share the stage with people like Donald Trump, Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki, Kim, and their whole group of advisors. And the massive message I'm seeing globally as I travel the world now is the recession is definitely not going away, and that's I can only give you my personal belief. This is dug its heels in, and we're in for a good 3, 4, 5 years ahead of us. So, Best You magazine, the messages the message that come through from your interviewees is vital, because this is about taking control, in answer to your question. Because with this global recession that's going on, it can only have a negative effect on us as individuals unless we take control. So we are going to see drops in house prices, I'm sure, as it bites further. We're going to see more redundancies. We're going to see interest rates eventually have to go up. That's going to affect people's level of borrowing, their businesses, their careers. Those people that are reading your magazine that are currently in a career, there's no guarantee they've got a career for the future. So my fundamental message right now at this moment in time, 2013, when you're interviewing me, is take back control of everything, right through from your health through to your finances. Don't rely on anybody else to have control over your life, which means society as a whole has to start to look at how the children are being brought up. Instead of going into work and feeling the job owes you something, make a decision: is this the career I want to be in? What can you do alongside your career? I mean, I'm a massive advocate for parallel incomes. It may not be you want to give up your job right now. You may love what you do, but with the current global economic situation, nobody can be guaranteed, no matter how much they love their job, where they're going to be in that job in 6, 12, 18, 24 months' time. So one thing is very much taking control of your financial situation, right through to how you manage your money, what skills you've got, what vehicles are out there to generate more income. Read magazines like Best You. Start to evolve. Re-educate. That's the term I use all the time. Re-educate. If you don't like the term personal development, just see it as a re-education of your core skills. That's another more simplistic way we can look at it. But it involves everything from understanding your core beliefs. What are your limiting beliefs, as you mentioned? What are your core values? Are they aligned? Do you know your hierarchy of values? You might be living by a set of values which were put upon you by as a young person by your parents, right through to your environment. Are you living in the right environment? Are you working in the right environment? If you don't change these things now, somebody else is going to govern your life in the next 5 years. And now is the time. It's not in 3 or 4 years' time. So magazines like Best You are perfectly positioned now for us all to be reading, because we, all of us, myself included, need new skills. It's a changing world. It's not like the industrial era where it was, here lad, get a good job for life, follow your dad's footsteps and everything will be fine. No such thing as a career for life anymore.
The thing is that the world has evolved so much in such a short period of time. Things that we take for granted now, Amazon, eBay, YouTube, Google, Facebook, you name it, everything it wasn't there 4 or 5 years ago. But I think that's what people are missing. And for me, as you said, it's about about learning. Whatever the skills may be,
totally,
it's about learning. That's what personal development is.
Yeah.
In my mind. Now, regarding you were talking about this double income, or being able to have a job on the side until you can generate some extra revenue. I'm always encouraging and entice people to become entrepreneurs, to become their own bosses, and
absolutely.
And there's more opportunities there. What's your thoughts regarding entrepreneurship and going out there and making a difference, doing something?
Yeah. Totally. It is almost, I would say, for the average person now, not even a choice. It's an obligation, because for two reasons. One is, I think if you're reading this or listening to the interview and you're looking at your future over the next 5 to 10 years, ask a simple question. Will my career provide me with the security that I want? Is my pension working for me? We've seen the collapse of some of the major organisations around the world, the banks, the pension system's failing people. It was set up to support the baby boomers. That whole system's collapsing around us. So, simple question. If you're in a career right now, you're not self-employed, you're not an entrepreneur by nature, will your career give you the security you want and your family? If you don't believe it will, then you have an obligation to do something. However, if you believe it may be there, but you've got a passion to follow, i.e. you've got an idea, a concept, a skill set, something like that, then go and pursue it. And the simple thing I get people to do when the first thing about setting up a business is I just get them to sit down and ask a simple question. What are you passionate about? What do you love to do? And also, what are your skills? And just to list them out. If you take anybody, it doesn't matter who, if we went out here and grabbed one person within 5 minutes walk from here, we could establish from that person what their core skills are, and then you can monetize that. And all entrepreneurship really is about is providing a solution to somebody's problem. The best entrepreneurs out there are the ones that identify an area where there's a problem in the marketplace and they provide a solution to that. I mean, Zig Ziglar is very famous for saying, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll receive what you want. And I think that's the true value of being an entrepreneur. And I think the one other thing to answer your question is, I don't think we're in a world now where it's about, okay, I'll give you something, you give me something back. It's about giving massive value, which I know you do through Best You magazine. It's about giving more than your readership, which is what you do, expect. It's about, as a speaker, as an entrepreneur, giving more than your client expects so they want to come back to you. Anthony Robbins has a great phrase. He talks about creating raving fans. And that's what we need to do now, is as entrepreneurs, be able to do that. And if anybody's listening to this or reading your magazine and is nervous about doing that, I would be more nervous about the consequences of not doing it. Because ultimately, if you're not in control of your financial future, somebody else must be, which is the beauty of being an entrepreneur. It could be just adding another £1,000, £2,000 a month as a part-time business. And once it starts to pick up speed, expanding that into something bigger. But have the courage to do it now, because the opportunities are out there. There's an absolutely huge opportunity while the industries are falling around us to get into the niche markets and be skilled in that area.
Absolutely. And there's massive growing markets all over the world. And
huge.
Internet gives you everything and anything you need, really.
Yeah, and as you say, with all these things like YouTube and Facebook and all the ways to get out to your marketplace, the world's become a lot smaller.
A computer, a laptop and an internet, that's all you need.
Right, and I mean, Best Use Digital, so you could have a reader in Calcutta reading your magazine. It doesn't have to be somebody local, and I think it's the same for most businesses now. We're international in what we do.
Who inspires you now?
Very good question. One of my biggest inspirations has been for the last 4 or 5 years, well, longer, but particularly the last 4 or 5 years, a gentleman called Wayne Dyer, who you may be aware of.
Yes.
Wayne Dyer is a great author, has been around for many, many years, and I've watched him change over the years, from when he was in his late 30s, really out speaking, to now he's had some health challenges, but he fights that through a very natural way. I like him because he's centered, and I've gone through what Carl Jung talks about, these evolution of the male soul. You go through the adventure towards the wisdom stage of your life, and I think now I'm in my 40s, I'm more inspired by people that are less motivational on an energetic level, more on a centered, calm, spiritual level, because I'm finding that when I'm out with my audiences, it's not just about saying you can do this and having lots of loud music, which we enjoy doing and it gets our audiences inspired, but it's about having a powerful message. So he's definitely one of my inspirations. Always has been, and I believe always will be, Anthony Robbins, who I know you're very strongly familiar with. He's a great advocate for life change, and I think I've seen him go through his own changes.
He's done a lot of good, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's helped a lot of people. And another gentleman that over the years has been quite an inspiration for me, and particularly more recently, is a gentleman called David Wolfe, who is, in my mind, the number one raw food specialist in the world. He's just an incredible advocate for dynamic, healthy life and living with vitality. And his brand and who he is as an individual has really inspired me this last 10 years now. Amazing person.
And what drives you?
Helping people more than anything else. It's interesting because we had this conversation this week. My wife and I, my fiance, there you go, I'm married her already. My fiance and I sat down and we had a look at our vision for what we're doing. She's writing children's books at the moment, and she was checking in with me to say, are you inspired still by what you're doing with the brand? And the Turning Point brand, the Bold Truth band, as you mentioned, very much for me is the next driving force. There's lots of other carrots that are being dangled in front of me. But what's driving me more than anything right now is helping people, as you asked the question, deal with the current climate and what they need to be doing now with their lives. I think we need leaders. We need the people that you're interviewing more than ever before. We need people that are carrying a light, that are not afraid to air their voice. And maybe they're challenging the status quo. They may even be saying things to challenge the average person's belief about the world. But I always say to my audiences, I don't mind if I upset you a little bit, because in upsetting you, I must be challenging your beliefs. And that's really what I want to do. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm completely right for their lives at that moment, but at least it gives them a chance to question their current life. So it's very much about helping people go through transformation. That's the biggest drive for me at the moment.
And what's your plans for the future?
Well, aside from being a great father, I've got a 4-year-old daughter, and that's partly why we came back to this country. One of my major plans is to take the brand to another level. We've been running it through seminars, which has been great. We help people through our Turning Point seminars, and we do health and vitality seminars, money management, time management seminars. But a seminar can only get to a certain number of people. So the next step for our brand is, and for me personally, is digitising our product. So that's literally where we're going at the moment. In the same way I know you've been doing, is to get it out to a broader audience. So as much as I'm being offered opportunities to speak in other countries, which I love to do, that's still, you're only limited by who's in front of you. And we're in a time now where we have all the right technology to get the message out there. So it's about getting a message out to a much, much broader audience and helping people take control of their lives. That really is my core mission, certainly for the next 4 or 5 years.
Brilliant. And my last question is, what would you like your legacy to be?
That's a great question. I think the legacy that I would like to see on my tombstone, if I did have a tombstone, would be that he followed his passion and he led by example. I think more than anything else, it's about, for me, the legacy is leaving a series of products and tools and material that people can read in 5, 10, 15 years' time. The same way I'm inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, even though he's passed away, and people prior to him, some of the great philosophers. I'd like to be able to say that when I leave this earth, that there's somebody young in 20, 30, 50 years' time, 80 years' time, that picks up a book, or in those days maybe a digital product, and reads that and is inspired by it. And I'd like my daughter and hopefully our expanding family to be able to benefit from that by growing themselves and being, as I call, emotionally developed rather than just academically developed, because that's really my big mission, is to get people to shift from just the academic part of what we're taught to an emotional and a spiritual development, which is, I think, where our true core really is.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for watching Inspiring People. Thank you very much, Rohan. That was really nice. I really enjoyed that. Thank you.
For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.